Before and after Christmas, I was contacted by so many students, particularly the Irish Secondary Schools Union, and they were really concerned about the plans, or in fact, the non-plans for the Leaving Cert at that point. Now, as a former teacher and a parent, I could fully appreciate their panic because of the ongoing uncertainty. Now, at that time, before any decisions were taken, I suggested a hybrid model, which is basically what we have here today, because I think this gives students some choice, some flexibility, and also some certainty. Minister, I believe that you have brought forward good legislation and that you have learned from the mistakes that were made last year, and that's important. I also believe that many of the different viewpoints of students, teachers, principals and parents have been taken on board in this legislation, and that too is positive. I think that this legislation and the changes to our Leaving Cert examination system brought about by COVID gives us an opportunity to assess the exam system that we currently have in place and to ask ourselves, does it meet the needs of all involved in the process of education, and especially, does it give our students the opportunity to reach their potential? As a former maths teacher, I was always personally largely in favour of a final examination. And indeed, for many years, I corrected exam papers, and I could see at first hand the impartiality and the objectivity of the process. But even in the correction of maths papers, there was always room for professional judgment. Many students sometimes think that correctors are there to take marks away from them. But in fact, giving marks is what correcting is all about. So if there's nothing on the script, you can't give marks. But if there's any reasonable attempt, or even partly reasonable attempt, then students could easily get 3 out of 10, which is 30%, and that's just to begin with. And the reason I say this, and I'm deviating a bit from the legislation, but the reason I say this is because I know a lot of students are under real pressure right now, concerned about the time they've missed, about the parts of the course that they may not have covered or not fully covered during class time, and 100 other individual reasons why a student may feel pressurised. And I want those students to know that those who correct their exams are there to give them marks. Yes, correctors have to be objective and fair, but the vast majority are teachers and fully understand the circumstances that all students face when they sit exams. So finally, I would say to students, correctors are your allies, and if you can at all, give them something to work with. Now, to come back to the lessons that we can learn from the last 2 years, and in this I include myself, because I don't believe we can go back to the old format of the Leaving Cert. And while I know it's a huge extra burden for teachers and schools and principals, and I know it will require a certain amount of training and perhaps upskilling, but I think some form of continuous assessment in all subjects, alongside project work, practical work, oral work, and a final exam would be a better option, certainly an interim option. As I said earlier, an exam largely guarantees an objective result on the day. But of course, it's only on the day. And while all the learnings for that 2 to 3 years lead up to that day, nonetheless, for many reasons, a student may not give of their best on the day. Continuous assessment has many positives, but it also has challenges. And if we are to go down that road, consultation with teachers, with their unions, with students, with schools will be paramount. In fact, just today, I was speaking to a school principal, and she said that the discussion in the staff room this morning was around the fact that every student is now really stressed over every single assessment. It's like a mini leaving cert for them. So all of this has to be taken into consideration. There's no magic bullet here. And in the context of the work undertaken last year and this year by teachers, year heads, school principals, in ensuring a calculated grades process, I really believe they deserve our support and recognition. A completely new system was thrust upon them, and like some other frontline staff, they undertook this important work with the seriousness, commitment and objectivity it deserved. I think that the last 18 months have seen a shift in the tectonic plates of education, with students, teachers, individual schools and parents making a much stronger contribution to putting in place a system that allows students the best possible opportunity to achieve and grow in the current difficult circumstances. So I think there can be no going back to the old ways. Education has become much more participatory, and that trend must continue. Now, regarding the legislation in front of us today, as I already said, I am very supportive of it. The issue of prohibited communications or canvassing, as we know it, is, I believe, dealt with in a transparent and a fair way. The sanctions are tough, very tough, but I think they need to be, so that people will not be tempted to try to influence. We all know the Leaving Cert is important. In fact, I believe we make it far too important. It's a milestone on the journey. It's not our final destination. But because of the importance that we attach to the exam, it is really crucial that every effort is made to discourage lobbying. If it starts at all, even in limited circumstances, it totally undermines the objectivity of the exam. I think we need to be honest about it. If there is even a hint or a rumour of canvassing, and that might influence, it will snowball. It'll create dissent and distrust and do untold damage to the exam system. And that's why I think sanctions need to be severe, and all need to be aware of the impact of any effort to influence outcomes. I am pleased that the standardisation process used last year has been modified, that rankings have been discontinued, and that school profiling will not play any part in determining individual results. One final point, Minister. I think you need to look again at contingency measures and be prepared for unexpected situations that may arise, due, for example, to public health measures, local lockdowns, an outbreak of COVID in a class or a school, students who may have to self-isolate because they were unwittingly a close contact. Now, I understand there can only be a certain number of safety nets. But Minister, if COVID has taught us anything, it has taught us that we need to be flexible and agile, and that we need a plan C as well as a plan be. So I would ask you, Minister, if you would look at that again.